Police officers of Reddit, what's the weirdest thing you've caught teenagers or kids doing that is illegal but you found hilarious? I've posted this before but I always find it hilarious cause my dad is a goofy fun guy. He's been a cop for almost 30 years now and he loves his job cause he gets to be out in the community and make a difference. The guy is gonna retire next month and he's stoked he gets to play Battlefield and go on vacation. Anyway, he gets a call one night about some teenagers vandalizing a park. Dispatch lets him know that it's a lady that calls 24/7 thinking she's the neighborhood watch. So as he cruises in towards this park he comes in all lights blacked out and watches from a distance. After a couple minutes of watching he realizes these people are playing hide and seek. They also look a little older than just teenagers. He gets out of a car and sneaks up to some of them hiding in a group behind some trees and bushes. My dad hunkers down behind them and one of them looks back and sees him. The kid freaks out and starts to run and my dad grabs him and says, "Dude, shut up or the other team will find us." The guys crack up cause now they realize my dad is down to win this game. He ends up playing hide and seek with this group of 21-year-olds for the next hour. The best part was about 6 months later. I'm having a Halloween shindig at my house and my dad stops by cause he wants to score some burgers off us while he's at work. He walks in and a guy at the party is like, "Holy shit. Your dad is officer. He played hide and seek with us." Double quote. While in college we got the police called on us for a violent crime in progress. When they pounded on our door we opened and they barged in. A neighbor reported hearing people yelling things like, "Shut up you little, I'm going to RPA your freaking 12-year-old ass," along with a girl screaming profanity. When the cops saw it was 3 guys and a girl drinking and playing Halo, the one just looks at the others in sheer disbelief. The cop starts to tell us they were called in for a RPA in progress and tell us how we need to be more careful and whatnot because it could have ended badly. During this time my friend is still on the headset and the other guys we were playing with are wondering what the hell is going on and are hassling him. And then my friend says with the cop in the room, "We were apparently RPing you frikers so badly somebody had to call the cops." And the cops just can't hold it in and start cracking up. They did give us a noise warning but no citations. My brother was a cop who worked nights in Minneapolis. One snowy night near the UOFO campus he noticed a car weaving. So he pulled them over thinking there would be alcohol involved. Nope, it was a car full of deaf people having an argument which included the drivers. He just told the driver to not sign in drives. Not illegal but certainly weird. Got a noise complaint call where the neighbors informed dispatch the parents are out of town and suspect underage drinking and or possible use. These types of calls are the worst because you can almost guarantee someone is puking in the back of your car and you'll have to write a buttload of local ordinance paper. We roll up, throw the overheads on to scatter as many as possible and make a slow walk up to the front door. We play the nobody's home game for a while until one of the kids lets my partner in the back door. We subsequently find around 12 teenagers and what appears to be multiple bottles of rum and vodka as well as several baggies containing marijuana and some pills. Upon further inspection, we find the liquor bottles have been emptied and filled with water. The marijuana is actually oregano and parsley and the pills were just aspirin. They were having a pretend party to put on social media but the strongest thing in the room was a Red Bull. My brother was once jumping his bike off the end of the public boat dock behind the city hall which also housed our police station. They had it tethered so it wouldn't get lost on the bottom. The cop came out, watched for a while and said, "I'm fairly certain something about that is illegal. But I can't figure out what and it looks like fun. So be safe," and walked back inside. A few years ago a friend and I were walking home through a residential estate. Drunk. After a night out. About halfway home a police car pulls up next to us and says they need to talk to us. They say that CCTV in the area had observed us entering several front gardens. We then drunkenly explained that we had been going into people's gardens and swapping around flower pots, hanging baskets and garden ornaments with their next door neighbors. One of the cops was laughing a lot and the other seemed really confused. Luckily they got another call and let us carry on our way. My friend had a bunch of prop arms and legs in his car, you know. College. He and his other friend were trespassing in the Northfield tunnels. Google it. And when they get back to the car there is a cop waiting. He asks to see in the trunk so they open it. He jumps back a sec. But quickly realizes the arms and legs are fake and he hasn't caught some serial killers. Then gives them a very stern shut the frick up look as he calls his partner from the car to come look at us all shaky voiced. As he tells my friend and his friend to put their hands up. Hella serious. The other cop comes over. Looks in the trunk and freaks the frick out. Screams. And runs away back to the car. At which point the first cop bursts out laughing and tells my friends haha. He was. Hahaha he was in Vietnam. Hahaha and does a get out of here gesture and sends them on their way. So basically he used my friend to pull a super cruel practical joke on his partner. My brother is a cop and he told me one time he got a call around 9:30 in the morning for a suspicious person sitting in their car in a neighborhood. My bro goes up to him and asks what he's doing. Dude is waiting for his wife to leave for work so he can go back home and play WoW all day instead of go to his own job. My bro tells him to go wait somewhere else because he's freaking out the neighbors. I didn't catch them. But when I arrived at my first station, after graduating from the academy, I was talking to some of the guys who had been there a while. I asked if they knew my cousin, who lived in that patrol area. Turns out they did. They had a call a few years back of some kids driving around, pulling up next to cars at traffic lights, and waving a huge dildo at the drivers, laughing hysterically, then driving off. They were pulled over, brought down to the station, and parents were notified. There was one old timer who was a bit of DCK, telling me that my cousin was a pervert, as were his friends. But the other guys said they thought it was hilarious when it happened. And they never charged the kids with anything. I still mess with my cousin about that when I see him. I'm not a cop, but I have a story where I made a cop laugh. It was after I got arrested for stealing alcohol from Target and I was handcuffed to a rail on the wall of this room while I was waiting to be processed. The cop was just passing through and asked the guy being detained across from me what he did. The other guy, who was around my age, said he was there for retail theft, but he stole a bunch of gains. Then he turned to me and asked the same question. After I told him I was there for stealing alcohol, he looked down at my shoes, which were a pair of really beat up Chucks, started laughing and said, "Man, you should have tried to steal a new pair of shoes, because those are fricked up." I couldn't help but laugh myself and he kept laughing to himself as he left the room. Not a police officer, but this story is going to fit. I was 17. Just got my learner's permit which allowed me to drive alone but not after midnight or before 6 AM. NJ older rules, and a bunch of friends. I went to Applebee's. I had a couple of airsoft guns in the trunk, about 3,000 plastic BBs, and we all decided it was a good idea to chase each other around in the parking lot with the guns. Stupidly, I took off the yellow tips. Waitress inside sees us, calls the cops. Cops show up, arrest us and ask us to sit on the curb. After about 7 minutes of seriousness, they take the guns and BBs, dump them in my trunk and back seat, laugh and leave after breaking the airsoft guns. They told us not to play with these in public parking lots and not to remove the orange yellow tips. Those guys took our beers too. Now that I think about it, we could have been killed. Not a police officer, but did loss prevention. Watched a girl of about 13 steal a pregnancy test, go into the bathroom. She came out about 10 minutes later bawling her eyes out, sprinting out of the store. I could have stopped her for shoplifting, but couldn't stop laughing and thinking this girl's life is ruined. I shouldn't make it worse. My dad always tells this story from when he was young and stupid in the 70s. Now he's old and stupid. Anyway, one of their friends is hanging out the sunroof while they're driving down the freeway. Naturally, they get pulled over. The cop comes to the window and says, "I don't know what but I'm going to find something to ticket you for. He goes back to his cruiser and flips through his handbook for about 20-30 minutes. He finally comes back with this huge grin on his face and says, "You over exceeded the limits of your vehicle, here's your ticket." Double quote. I'm not a police officer, very sorry. But 2 kids at my school, one of them was a friend's brother, actually got drunk last year and climbed a 100+ foot crane all the way to the top. Best part? The crane was directly across the street from the police station. They were noticed right away and arrested the second they came down. Not an officer, but a cool story, bro. Some buddies and I were launching rockets out of a soccer park that was empty at the time. Well, a nosy neighbor across the road called the cops and told them we were shooting off fireworks in broad daylight. Anyways, a cop shows up and starts to talk to us. We show him all of our rockets, our safety gear, and flight journals that a friend of mine was keeping. The cop goes back to his car and watches us launch a few rockets as we weren't breaking any laws. About 10 minutes later, his off-duty chief showed up in his personal vehicle and joined us in launching rockets. Later he told us that he had dozens of unfinished rockets and if we wanted were welcome to have them if we promised to invite him to the launch. About a year later, my friend, who kept the journals, had most of them complete. Now, these rockets were expensive rockets that were replicas of actual ones. The chief was happy to see them all in flight and told us that he'll make sure we weren't bothered in the future. Then he shot us. A smile. Not me but my uncle. He's a pretty young guy, 35? Something like that, and definitely even younger at heart, so he always tends to handle things in a pretty relaxed way. This was last year right after high school graduation. About 50 or so of the grads decided to celebrate by buying animal-themed Onesies and parade around town in them. It got to be about 8 PM and everyone was obviously pretty tired, so they decided to take a rest outside of this shopping center around 15 minutes from my house. One of the store owners didn't like this too much, so he called 911 saying some kids were loitering outside of his store. This obviously isn't an emergency by most standards, so my uncle was the closest officer to the scene, so he was the only one who showed up. He thought it was the funniest thing of them to do, so he took a selfie with some of them, gave them a warning, and just told them to head out. When I was a teen, living in the Phoenix area, we would fill up the back of a pickup with shaved ice from behind the ice rink and then build snowmen in people's yards. We would do it at night before ringing and driving away. One time, a neighbor called the cops after hearing a group of teens sneaking around outside. The cop came by and found out what we were doing. Instead of getting after us, he told us to follow him somewhere. We ended up making a snowman in his own front yard. He rang the doorbell and hid around the corner while his wife came to the door and then his kids came out. There are some good cops out there. Not all of them are like the ones shooting people without cause. Not a police officer, but this happened to me. I was going for my morning run one day when I noticed a car following me driving on the edge of the road. I've looked a couple of times over my shoulder at the car and noticed that there were red and blue lights sorta hidden on the dash and worked out quickly it was an undercover car. Or a detective's car or something. Anywho's, my street is coming up, so after checking it's safe, I run across the road to my street and start jogging up the hill. At this point, the car behind me follows me, and there's another undercover car coming down the hill that pulls up onto the side of the road in front of me. And another 2 cars show up out of nowhere. And all of a sudden I'm surrounded by the cars with plainclothed cops all jumping out of the cars and coming towards me. So it's not the cops who are laughing, but obviously I realize they've made a mistake and I start cracking up laughing. I tried my hardest not to, but thinking about this situation was hysterical to me. So as I'm laughing I say to them all casual like, "Hey guys, what are yas up to?" Double quote. Long story short, someone was breaking into houses in the area and they mistakenly thought it was me. I don't know why. I got PSS drunk with a hot girl I was trying to sleep with, 18 or 19 at the time, and after she politely declined, Suggested I go home. Being drunk as a skunk, but still having some wits about me, I took my longboard out of my car, left my car keys in her house, and began skating home. This is about 2:30 am. I'm making my way through a shopping center parking lot when out of nowhere, I get a cop searchlight in my face and proceed to wreck hard, like landed on my hands, knees, and face simultaneously and not being able to pop back up. Cop comes up to me stifling his laughter and gives me a once over. He knows I'm underage and drunk. I know he knows I'm underage and drunk. He asks to see my ID. Asks if I have a car. Yes sir. It's at this girl's house. I can only assume he decided to not frick me over because I was smart enough to leg it instead of driving drunk, and gave me a ride home instead. I can only imagine what it looked like to him though. A drunken teenager attempting to longboard home and then completely wrecking face at 2:30 in the morning. I'm sure the boys at the station got a good laugh at my expense. We were doing laps around a pond with a rope tied to my Jeep and another person wakeboarding behind holding onto the rope. The police officer pulled up on the nearest road, flashed his lights and motioned for us to come over to him. When we got there he just said, "That looks like a hell of a good time, but I'm getting tired of dispatch getting calls about y'all. Sorry guys. Save up some money and buy a boat." Double quote. My favorite story that I like to tell trainees is when my partner and I busted up a Christmas party. Entirely by accident. We got a call for a noise complaint out in the unincorporated county area. We drive down about a quarter mile of driveway, one of those houses, almost entirely lined with cars. We can hear the music from the main road. We both pull in with the intention of finding someone reasonably sober, telling them to turn it down, and calling it a night. This was close enough to shift change that we could ride the call out and no one would have accused us of milking the call. Instead, one erstwhile young partygoer comes staggering out from the backyard, does the most comical double take I've ever been witness to, then takes off running from whence he came, screaming cops. Cool whoops. The end result was similar to flipping on the lights in a nasty apartment, scattering teens like sea croaches. My partner and I were too busy laughing at the cliche to do anything other than heckle the ones trying to be stealthy in the woods nearby. Found the homeowner. Music was turned down. No one got a DUI. The few that didn't scatter too far. We made clean up all the beer cans on the property. TTY thing to do. Leaving a mess for the hosts to clean up. So, a girl and I were getting a little frisky in the backseat of my car. She was about to start giving me head when we see a flashlight shine through the window. We flip out and climb back to the front seat. The cop asked for my ID and whatnot. When he came back from his car he asked, "So, did you see me drive up?" I replied with, "No. I saw your flashlight and freaked out." He then said, "Oh, so we both had an oh frick moment. I wasn't expecting anything, then I looked in and was just like shitty." Then he proceeded to tell me one of my tires was low on air and gave me a list of good places to go have sex in a car. Haha, funniest experience ever. The scariest part is that the girl I was with's dad is a cop, and those two cops were part of his squad. She told me at their Christmas that cop told the story to her mom and they both thought it was hilarious. When I was 16 my friend bought a 1976 Lincoln Town Car. He took it for a joyride around my neighborhood. No plates, tags, registration, etc. I decided it would be a good idea to climb on the roof and ride the car like a surfboard. At that very instant a police car turned in front of us and I knew we were absolutely screwed. The officer rolled down her window and said, "Guys, come on, you know that's not safe," in the nicest, most motherly tone. I quivered sorry and climbed back in the car. She waved to us and went on her way. Greatest mom cop ever. Back in high school, a buddy of mine used to film prank calls and just being weird in general. One film involved taking off his shirt and covering himself in ranch dressing. The scene was set in a house that was under construction. Only 2 cops responded to the call. And there were 3 people in the building, including the cameraman. People may not know this, but ranch dressing dries to a pale yellow. The cops didn't spot the cameraman right away. And my shirtless friend put his hands in the air and walked over to them right away, while still on film. As the cop handcuffs him, he says, "What the hell is all over you?" To which my buddy responds, deadpan, "That would be ranch dressing, sir." The video ends with the camera shaking as the guy filming busts out laughing. He's no longer with us, but he was one of the funniest people I've ever met in his own totally unique way. R.I.P. KP. Lots of law enforcement won't come here simply because they aren't supposed to talk about their calls on social media. Just as and for your information, as a teen I drove an old Cadillac and had piled 11 people into the car, one of them in the trunk, to drive people home from a thing at my house. We were filming a video for class and had a cop's hat in the back window of the car, and the guy in the trunk was holding it shut with his hand. 2 blocks from the house we were pulled over. The cops asked me over their speaker to come back to their car window, after first yelling at the guy in the trunk to get out. And I show up at the window pretty dang terrified that I am fricked. The cop in the passenger seat leans over and asks, "How many people do you have in there?" And I say 11. The other cop says, "Oishti." I said 12. Turns out that they were looking for a rapist dressing up like a cop, and a dead body in a trunk, and our car fit both descriptions. It was Stockton, CA. That kind of shti is just a Tuesday regular agenda. They made me take groups of people at a time home but did not issue a ticket or anything. My friend's dad is a high-ranking police officer and an all-around great dude. One time when we were 12 years old, he offered to take us for a ride in his 67 Camaro, as he had just recently finished fixing it up nicely. We hopped in the car and he drove us around the city for 15 or 20 minutes. Then he took us to an empty parking lot behind what I think was an elementary school, and parked in the middle and just sat there for a minute, not saying anything. As soon as we asked why we were sitting there, he spun the wheel and floored the gas and busted out a series of screeching loud donuts that left us in a haze of tire smoke. Being 12 years old, I thought that shti was 10 times crazier than any roller coaster, haha. Definitely one for the books. Not that weird. But when I was a teenager, I was out with a couple friends after dark and I decided to moon some cars. Went for the triple whammy. But that third car turned out to be a patrol car. They loved it, telling us how they had just gotten done saying that no one ever does stupid shti in front of cops. Then whammo, there's your ass hanging out. They did the runaway check, then let me go and told me I made their night. In first year university we have a jello slip and slide down the hall of one of our suites and had the entire floor packed with people sliding on it. We had literally garbage cans filled with jello which ended up everywhere on the walls and even on the ceiling in some places. Eventually the campus police show up and take one look at it and start laughing. We ended up talking to them and they said they had never seen anything like it in their entire careers.